I so appreciate the opportunity to connect with all of you and just want to say that I too have been a beneficiary of these workshops in this past. In fact, it was our first big round of grants that we got through some pretty big family foundations that helped us power the work back about 2 years ago. So if you're here right now, you're in the right place, and I can personally and professionally attest to how valuable the connections that you can make here today, as well as just the depth of expertise, information, and care that we have in the presenters. I want to tell you a little. Yeah, it was the very first workshop. Oh my gosh, it was a lifetime ago, right? I did want to just plug Lighthouse Immigrant Advocates just a little bit more because, as we know, there are a number of amazing organizations serving a variety of amazing causes in our area. But as the planned in-person host for this event, we were excited to bring you into our space. So Lighthouse Immigrant Advocates, we are a nonprofit immigration legal services, basically law office and advocacy center. We're based in Holland, Michigan, and we serve immigrant families and individuals across all of the state of Michigan. We help people navigate the immigration system, providing affordable and accessible and culturally competent legal representation. We have accredited legal representatives. We also provide education, advocacy, and in general, we're here for the community. Our work is rooted in the belief that legal stability truly is one of the foundational things for community stability. I see some of the other org representatives that here, and I think that we all have a really important part to play. I think one that I've learned a lot more in the last 5 years, Lighthouse, is just how precarious it can be. Just as much, if not more at times, to have a legal status that is not stable, just like having unstable housing, just like having an unstable source of food, just like having unstable access to healthcare. So that is the niche that Lighthouse plays in, and we are housed in Holland, but we do have a number of services that are statewide. The key one I want to mention to anyone that's on the line, if you are working with folks that are immigrant or immigrant adjacent, we have a free immigration services hotline that is running 3 days a week, and information about it is front and center on our website. Anyone can call and be connected almost immediately to one of our attorneys or legal representatives and ask for actual legal advice at no cost. So there's no retainer, there's no $300 fee, there's no scheduling. It's just, hey, what does this mean for my green card? Hey, what does this mean for my brother who is trying to get married? What does this, the questions that people have right now are just so important to be answered quickly. And so that's a service that we're able to provide largely through grants that have been provided by local foundations and donors. And a lot of that grant rating has been directly impacted by the things that I've learned from these workshops. So that's my Lighthouse and grant rating workshop plug. One of the best things I think that the grant writing series does is to present a variety of topics. And so over the years, there have been so many just broad levels of information presented. And I want to point out that on the Welcome Plan website, there is a listing and links to YouTube videos of most, if not all, of the past grant writing sessions. I consider that just a huge resource for anyone that is doing work for impact, especially in our area, because you're going to hear from experts and from people that have really thought about how to make grants work for the community. So I just encourage you to explore that as a further resource. They are long. They're like an hour and a half long, but this is a pretty weighty subject, and it takes a lot of expertise and skill to do it very well. So I just encourage you to go there. There's also a survey that I encourage you to fill out at the end of this session. It really helps the organizers know what worked well, what didn't work well, so we can continue to make it better. Positive and continuous feedback is always very helpful. All right. The final thing I will say is that in terms of collaborations and partnerships, LIA is, I think, not alone in saying that we wouldn't exist without the collaborative environment that we operate here in West Michigan, especially. People want to work together. People love to work together. And it's something that not only funders want to see, which is true, but it's something that allows organizations to really expand and elevate their work and leverage the best parts of different areas of services that we provide in a way that makes things possible that weren't before. So this is a very important topic, and I'm just so grateful that you're all here today. I'm also grateful to our two actual professional presenters, so I'm happy to introduce them. There are two of them, and their names are a little bit similar, so please pay attention. Trish Okolo is the Development Operations Coordinator at Treetops Collective. She has a master's degree in philanthropy and nonprofit leadership from Grand Valley State University. That's MPNL. She specializes in grant writing, fundraising, events, donor relations, hiring, onboarding, and professional development, all aimed at fostering organizational growth and community impacts. Tricia Smith-Mulder, pronouns she, her, is our other presenter, and this is I just can't say enough how much you have been able to pour into this grant writing series and to organizations that have really benefited from your skills and services. But she began her professional journey in the financial services sector after earning a bachelor's in business administration from GVSU and an MBA from Cornerstone. In 2011, she shifted her focus to youth advocacy and took on a director-level role at the Gerald R. Ford Job Corps Center in Grand Rapids. She spent 7 years supporting disadvantaged youth ages 16 to 24. During that time, she discovered her passion for grant writing, and after leaving that Job Corps in 2018, following an unexpected meeting with a former colleague, she founded River City Grant Writing. Today, Tricia enjoys traveling with her husband, John, and while her 3 daughters have all left the nest, she now fills her home with an ever-growing collection of houseplants. So please help me welcome Tricia and Trish.
Thank you everyone for joining today's section, and I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad taking this particular topic. I love it. So today we are going to talk about how nonprofits can create clear partnership documents that make grant proposal easier to understand, easier to manage, and easier for funders to support. Partnerships are very important in grant writing because funders do not only want to know that an organization has a good idea, but they also want to know that the organization has the right relationships, the right support system, the right structure to actually carry out the work effectively well. So by the end of today's section, our goal is for you to understand these three main things. First, you will learn how to define partners' role. This means being able to clearly explain who each partner is, why they are involved, and what strength or expertise they bring to the project. And the second is you will learn how to clarify responsibilities. A common mistake in grant proposals is mentioning partners without explaining what they will be doing. Today we'll talk about how to move from general partnership language to specific responsibilities. And thirdly, you learn how to connect deliverables to the budget. This is very important because partners need to know why this particular amount is tied to a particular budget. And the budget should actually reflect the work the funders want to see. They really want to see that the money is connected to what you really want to do. And during this section, you also practice identifying different types of partners. Not every partner plays the same role. Some partners may provide referrals, some may provide space, some may offer professional services, some may help with outreaches, some may support evaluation or data collections. So you also practice thinking where to find real organizations that could become great partners. Sometimes we know we need partners, but we are not sure where to begin. So we'll talk about practical places to look, including community networks, non-profit coalitions, funders lists, school system, local department. And finally, I want you to also begin thinking like a funder. When a funder reads a proposal, they're asking themselves, is this organization prepared? Are their partners real? Are the roles clear? Is the budget reasonable? Can this team deliver the results? So by the end of this section, you should leave with a clear partnership plan and helpful questions to ask potential partners and ideas for documents you can use in your grant application, such as the letters of support, the memorandum of understanding, that's the MOU, and the partners commitment forms and work plans. Next slide, please. So why partnership matters? Partnership matter because strong partnership can make a grant proposal more competitive, especially when each partner's role is clear. A founder wants to see your organization understand the community needs, but they also want to see that you are not trying to solve every problem alone. There are lots of problems, but one organization cannot solve everything. In many cases, the strongest proposals are not the ones where one organization claims it can do everything. The strongest proposals are often the ones where the lead organization knows its strengths and also knows when to bring in others. The key point here is this: partnership should not replicate services. They should fill the gap, expand capacity, and improve outcome for the people being served. A partnership should kind of fill service gap. For example, if your organization works with families but does not provide legal services, you may partner with a legal aid organization. If your organization provide youth programming but does not provide mental health counseling, you may want to partner with a counseling provider. If your organization works with seniors but does not provide transportation services, you may partner with a transportation agency because you cannot do everything on your own. So a partnership should not duplicate your services. If two organizations are doing the same thing for the same people in the same way, a funder may wonder why both are needed in this project, because you guys are doing the same thing. Why are you involving the both? So duplication can make a proposal look unclear and inefficient. So partnership also expands reach and access. One organization may have like strong programming, but another organization may have deeper relationship with specific community. For example, a school may help reach students. A church may help reach families. A clinic may help reach patients. A neighborhood association may help reach residents. A trusted community leader may help build trust. So partnership also brings different strengths together. One organization may be strong in direct services. Another may be strong in evaluation. Another may be strong in lived experience leadership. Another may be strong in data collection. Another may be strong in system change. When these strengths come together in a clear way, the proposal becomes really strong. And partnership shows founders that the work is collaborative and coordinated. Funders often want to support projects that are connected to a broader community effort. They want to know the organization are not working in isolation, but are communicating, coordinating, and building on existing community assets. Partnership also strengthens program impact and sustainability. A project is more likely to last beyond one grant period when it is supported by strong relationships, strong collaborations, and shared responsibility. When we talk about partnership in grant writing, we are not just talking about like adding names to proposal. We are talking about building a structure that help the project succeed. Next slide, please. Yeah, this slide right now, it's highlight like the philanthropic and government funders that are increasing, and like 85% of funders really want to see that partnership, really want to see that relationship, really want to see that community, and really want to see that multi-sectoral collaboration among different organizations. So when we say cultural, multi-sector collaboration approach, we mean that different types of organizations or institutions are working together. This may include non-profits, school, religious places, healthcare providers, government departments, businesses, universities, faith community, neighborhood groups, and people with lived experiences. The reason this matters is because most community problems are complex. They're so complex that you cannot just solve it alone. And like housing instability, food insecurity, youth development, workforce access, healthcare access, transportation barriers, and mental health needs are not usually solved by one organization. For example, if a nonprofit wants to support immigrant women, that's what we do at Treetops, and don't support immigrant women entering the workforce, the nonprofit may need partners for childcare because they may not have childcare, they don't have that strength for that. They may need partners for transportation. They may need partners for English language support, for legal services, for job placement, and for mental health support. One organization may lead the project, but several partners may help make the project complete. Solo applications, like just single applications, can sometimes appear higher risk when the proposal does not show enough capacity. This does not mean that an organization cannot apply. You can apply alone, but some of the projects, some of your activities, when the funders look at it and say, oh, all these activities and just you're providing this, they tend to think, oh, I don't think this is okay. But there are some projects where you can do it on your own. Next slide, please. So now, what funders want to see? When funders review partnership, review proposal, grant proposal, they usually look for 5 things. They look for who. Let's start with who. Funders want to know who are the partners. Who are your partners? This means naming the organization, but it also means explaining why the organization is the right partner. You can't just say, for example, I want to partner with Treetops and just stop there. Why are you partnering with Treetops? Who is Treetops? What expertise to this particular organization bring? What community do they serve? What experience do they have? What relationship do they already have with the people you want to reach? This is really important. They want to know who. For example, instead of simply saying, we will partner with a local clinic, a stronger statement would be, we will partner with, for example, ABC Community Clinic, which provides culturally responsive healthcare services to low-income families. And we also support participants' referrals to preventive healthcare screening. So this gives the funders more confidence to say, oh, they really know who they really want to work with. Then the next thing is the what. What will each partner actually do? This is where many proposals becomes weak because they see a partner is involved, but they do not explain what the partners will be doing, because each partners need to have like a responsibility to do. They can't just be there in your project with just their name. What will they be doing? A strong proposal usually explain the division of labor. For example, we will recruit participants, we will host the training, we will provide the venue, who will provide transportation, who will lead the school, who will help bring the fund, who will provide interpretation, who will submit reports, who will handle follow-up. You need to, like, division of labor, but every partner need to have what they are bringing to the table. When the what is clear, the proposal becomes easier to understand and easier to manage. Then the third thing funders want to see is the how. How are you going to do it? This is about the governance and coordination in simple terms. Funder wants to know how the partnership will work. Yes, we know who you're partnering with. We know what they'll be doing, but how will all these come together? How will it work? How will you bring all together to start working towards your program? So how will decisions be made? How often will the partners meet? Who is the main point of contact? How will problems be handled? What happens if a partner cannot complete the task? So this, you really need like a governance and coordination to do this. So these do not have to be complicated, but it needs to be really clear in your proposal. You can say something like the lead organization, we convene monthly partners meeting, maintain the project and work plan, and coordinate communication among all partners. That's why work plan is really good when you're writing your grant proposal and you're working with partners. You should have like a clear work plan. This is who we are working with. This is what they'll be doing. This is how we're going to organize everything. There should be dates. There should be deadlines. And with that, you can easily kind of track what is going on. We said between January to February, we need to complete this, and this partner is responsible for this. So you can easily know what's going on in your project. But without work plan, without timelines, I don't think that will work. So they really want to see all this and know that, oh, we can really trust these people working with lots of partners. Then the fourth is the budget alignment. Budget is so important because budget is all about the money to use to do the project. And the budget should reflect the work. If a partner is providing staff time, training space, interpretation, materials, evaluation support, the proposal should explain how these costs are covered. It should be cleared. Sometimes partners contribute in-kind support. This is also valuable. I love in-kind support too, but it should still be documented. Thank you. But it should still be documented. Everything should be documented. For example, if a church is providing like a free space, that is an in-kind contribution. If a clinic is providing staff time for free, that is also an in-kind contribution. So funders appreciate seeing the value of partners' contribution because it shows shared investment. Sometimes a partner, like a welcome plan now, partnering with David and seeing this is partnership now. They're providing the space. This is a good partnership and this is an in-kind contribution. So it's so good to involve, to always let the funders know that, oh, this is what we are doing. This is what is it. And like here, like when I'm tracking most of these collaboration, I usually ask, we had like a project like two months ago, and at the Gram, they gave us that free space. I had to ask them, please, how much would this cost on a normal base? And when they told me that was and that's huge. Well, that was like an in-kind. We didn't get the money, but we got that free space. So that's going to be part of our story at the end. We got this. I'll put that into money. And another important thing, again, the fifth thing that funders want to see is tracking. Funders want to know how this partnership will track the progress and report impacts. Like we've been talking about data collection, we've been talking about impact reports and all that. So this is really where you talk about how you can track the progress of your partnership. Everything needs to be tracked. That's why a work plan is important. and it's good to get data. So this includes like attendance, participant outcome, referral, services provided. Did this partner really provide the services they said they're going to do? So all this should really be tracked, and you should discuss that in your proposal if there is a room to do that. If multi-partnership partners are involved, the proposal should explain how data will be shared. For example, will partner use a shared spreadsheet? Will they submit monthly updates? Will the lead organization collect the data? Who is responsible for the final report? A strong partnership says we know who is doing what, and we have a clear plan to deliver results. That sentence is very important because it summarizes what funders want. They want clarity. They want confidence. They want to know the partnership is not just a good idea, but it's a great plan that is involving so many people joining together different strengths and making everything to come out so well. Okay, so the parts the stuff is in two parts. The part one is the types of partner your organization may need. So do not begin by thinking only the organization name. So start by thinking about the need. Ask yourself, what services do our participants need? What kind, like for example, you can in your group you can come up with a project or something. Then you should sit and think, what services do our participants need that we cannot provide, because you may not be able to provide the particular thing. So what barriers keep people from fully participating in our program? So what expertise are we looking out for? So you should just think of all that and brainstorm on that. If you have questions, you can ask. Then the part two of it is where to find the actual organization. I think you can just do the part one. I think when Tricia is talking about her slide, there's a part where she will teach you on how to find the actual organization. I think you will do the second part. I see as per your activities, you do the second part. But this first part, just talk about the organization, the type of partners you are looking out for based on the kind of projects your group came up with. So 10 to 15 minutes.
There we go. So you all work together to identify the types of partners that you need. And then you've also hopefully took the time to figure out some different sources or resources to be able to locate those partners and put some names with missions. So as you start thinking of names of organizations, it's really important to choose the right partner, because a lot of organizations will think, I'm a small organization, if I can find a big organization with a lot of name recognition, they'll be the best partner for me. But that's not necessarily always true. And the reason why that is you may not have an aligned mission. They may not have the capacity to truly support you in your project. So the next thing we want to do is, now that we have some ideas about partners, we now need to kind of go through and do a test or vet them and choose the right partner for not just us as an organization, but also the project or program we're thinking about seeking funding for. So the first thing you want to do is do a fit test. And that's taking a look at their website, seeing what their mission is and the types of programs that they offer because of their mission. Population or geography alignment. Are they serving people in your area already? Do they want to expand to your area if they're not? Service gap filled. Is the thing that you're looking to have them support, or the gap you're looking for them to fill, is that something that they truly do? Next, this would likely have to be done during a conversation or an email exchange. Do they have the capacity to follow through and actually help you, not just in name only, but in true actions? And do they have a willingness to help you collect data? Do they have a willingness to help you create those grant reports if you get the funding? So those are all very important things during this vetting process to ensure that they are a good fit with you. The next thing you need to do is assess the risk of working with them. Because if you are putting your name as the lead person on a grant and you're saying that this partner will be doing something, you're assuming the risk and saying that you're taking the responsibility for these activities. So it's really important for you as an organization, especially if you're smaller, to make sure that the partner is a good risk. So an unclear decision maker is a risk you need to work through. You need to know who has the capacity to make decisions and give answers for that organization and ensure that you're working with them. If someone doesn't have a good data sharing process or policy, that is something you have to address and work through. Make sure you're working through budget expectations. How much are they looking to get paid? How much is expected activity-wise for those payments? When are they expecting payments? And does that fit with the timeline of the funder? You want to make sure you're not duplicating services. If you, for example, are a food pantry, partnering with another food pantry probably isn't the smartest thing. What you maybe want to do is partner with an organization that provides free transportation so people can get to your food pantry. So you want to go through and make sure there's not duplicating services happening. The other thing is be honest. Have those conversations with that potential partner. Make sure that they are a type of organization that adheres to grant funder deadlines when it comes to reports, that they're not always asking for extensions or just not submitting those reports on time. Because your reputation as a grant recipient hinges on the follow through of the partners you choose. The next thing you want to look at is what types of relationships, whether it be a subawardee or a subcontractor or a partner, are allowed in the request for proposals or the funder rules. You want to make sure that you're using the correct terminology and setting up that relationship to that terminology. While a subcontractor and a subawardee sound very similar, they do have two very different roles in a grant. And we talked about the next point a little bit during the last workshop. So shout out to the links about that Holland has been putting up. You definitely want to talk about that. As the competition in the grant space continues to increase, funders are more and more looking for shared responsibility. They're looking for organizations that are not duplicating efforts that are already being tried. That if a gap is found, people are working together to fill that gap with the existing infrastructure versus creating completely new infrastructure. That, and as a result, adds quite a bit of credibility to the proposal. It makes outcomes more achievable because you're sharing the responsibility of the grant, the data collection, and the reporting. Because I've never met a nonprofit person who had extra time on their hands. Matches require attachment type. So sometimes right in the funding requirements, they say if you're going to have a subawardee, they must be from this sector, or you must have. I just completed a grant today that required a minimum of 5 partners, and all of them had to be very carefully drawn out what their role was. So sometimes that is a requirement of a grant. And then the other thing is you need to make sure that they can commit in the time frame that the before the grant deadline, that you can have the meetings, you can work out your plan and come up with your agreements, which we'll touch on different types of agreements later in this presentation. But you want to make sure that they can meet that timeline, and they're not going to push you to a point where you're submitting a rushed application or are missing a deadline. Next slide, please. So, defining the roles. So you have identified some areas you need help with in filling gaps. You have gone through your fit assessment, identified the risks. So now you're sitting down. You've moved from the email stage to having a meeting face-to-face or on Zoom with the partner. And these are the types of questions that you're going to want to work out to ensure that it is going to be a well-defined relationship. First of all, not just who as in who is the organization, but who are the staff within that organization that will be responsible. What are the tasks that they're responsible for? And also, who do they report to in case they're fulfilling their obligations? It's very important to get a solid understanding of the organizational structure of your partner, and likewise providing that information to them. Because this is definitely not a one-way relationship. It is a reciprocal relationship. What specifically service, activity, or deliverable, or combination of those will they be providing? And likewise, what will you be doing as part of this project? What is the timeline? When is the planning stage? When is the execution stage? When is the wrap-up stage? Frequency. How often will those activities be performed? Whether it be specific dates or number of times, could be weekly, could be bi-weekly, monthly, however you want to define that. And if it is a report or data collection, what are the due dates and what are the goals and benchmarks that you want to establish in this partnership? What is going to be the true cost of doing that? Is it feasible for them to perform the expected activities for the amount of money you're willing to give them? Especially as a small organization. I find this a lot with small organizations, is they may be approached by a larger organization to perform a part of a grant or be a partner on a grant, and they're offered a flat sum to do that. But when we sit down and we actually calculate staff time and supplies and occupancy costs like rent and utilities and all of the things that go into performing those tasks, we find out that it's going to cost them twice as much to perform the tasks as what they're being offered. So it's very important to understand that what you're offering needs to cover the level of activity. And if you find out not enough money is being offered, that may mean you modify the expectations. You might modify the what. So it's more in line with what you can offer them financial compensation wise. And likewise, if you're approached, that provides you a negotiating effort. And then last but not least, what data or documentation will prove what happened? Data is king in the current grant climate. So how are you going to prove you held those tabling events, or you conducted a survey, or how are you going to prove that you did the activity, and who is responsible for doing that? So those are the 5 key parts of having that initial conversation and working out in the partnership role. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to go into our next breakout activity. So you've identified the types of partners you need. So the next thing you want to do is, I want you to, as a nonprofit leader, imagine a specific project. So with what you currently serve, with who you currently serve, the programs you currently have, and the project idea that you have, what gap currently is there that needs to be filled? Based on the last breakout that you did, what partner organization could possibly fill that gap? Where have you determined you can find them? And then, is there an actual organization that you or your group members can come up with that you believe fits that gap? So hopefully you have a really good idea now about the types of partners you need, the questions that you're going to ask them in order to be able to determine if they're a good fit and it's a good opportunity for you to work with them. Now we're going to talk about the different types of partnership documents. One of the links you will receive are templates of all of these types of documents that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to make sure that you walk away with not just a general idea of what these 5 documents are, but how to actually create them in the end, and some suggested verbiage and things like that. So the first type of document we're going to talk about requires the lowest level of commitment and effort, and that's a letter of support. Most anyone who's worked in the nonprofit field for any length of time probably has a whole collection of these letters. And it's a general endorsement of how wonderful of an organization you are from another like-minded organization. A letter of commitment is an endorsement of you as an organization, but also them verbally or in writing stating what they will be doing to help you with this project, or also to be able to identify how they help reciprocal services between the 2 organizations. The next document is very much a step up in commitment and responsibility, and that's a memorandum of understanding. That is a non-legally binding agreement. MOU, again, stands for Memorandum of Understanding. And that is where you very much in detail lay out each person's shared responsibilities for a specific project or set of services. A partnership agreement is even more intense and actually has some legal consequences related to it. And there is a higher level of commitment and expectation. Those have formal terms. they have expectations, they have begin dates, end dates, and all of the extra things that go with a legally binding agreement. From there, we have a shared work plan, and that is the highest level of commitment from an actual activity standpoint, where you are sharing operational details and you're working with each other almost on a weekly, if not daily basis to ensure activities are being created activities are being completed and completed properly at a high level of detail. Next slide, please. So, what each document should make clear, starting at the lowest level of commitment, is why the partner supports the project or you as an organization, what relationship they currently have with you, and if there is a specific role, if they're committing to a specific role, what is it? And then we want to make sure that the person signing and dating this letter of commitment or support is a person who has the authority to do so. Unfortunately, I've had it in the past where people have obtained letters of support from people without authority, so that then when they've gone to kind of say, hey, I need you to step up and follow through with what you said you did, they're like, the people who were in management or leadership of that organization have said, well, we can't, the person who signed this had no authority to do that. We can't help you. We don't have the capacity. So it's very important to make sure you are talking to the person with the authority or a person with authority. With regards to memorandums of understandings or the further agreements, you're going to outline a very detailed scope of services from both aspects. Again, these are not one-way agreements. You're going to talk about that timeline. You're going to talk about the deliverables. If any type of monetary payment or in-kind donations, with whether it be items or services, are going to be exchanged. A very important thing to talk about is how is confidentiality and data sharing and the confidentiality of that data. What are internal processes for both organizations, and how will they make sure that they're honoring each other's processes? And then you definitely want to outline a communication plan. It may seem silly to think, well, why do we have to say we'll meet twice a week or twice a month? Because when you get into the nitty-gritty of executing a program or a project, all of a sudden time slips away, and the next thing you know, it's been 6 weeks. You've been doing different things, slowly verging off the path of what the original agreement was for. So it's very important to schedule regular communication intervals to make sure you are staying on the path to make sure the program stays on track. With regards to shared work plans, it's going to incorporate the first two, but in addition to the scope of services, each task is going to have not just a position assigned, but an actual name of a person responsible, a due date, and then participant flow or referral steps. You're going to want to outline, if I'm referring client from organization A to organization B, what is the specific process? What forms need to be filled out, and what is an expected timeline for that referral to take place? You figure out where the data will be stored, where the source of that data is, and then again, like with the MOU or an agreement, you're going to make sure that you're checking in and doing a regular communication or status check. So language, as with so many things, the more specific the language the better it is, because then there's less room for misinterpretation or misunderstanding. So a really good example of that would be language to avoid would be partner will help with outreach. Outreach in and of itself is a very vague and very broad term. A much better way to say that would be partner will distribute program flyers at 2 monthly intake events and refer eligible participants using a shared referral form. Then everybody knows how many times they're expected to perform those tasks, and if they do have a referral, exactly what that referral form looks like. Next slide, please. So, as Trish said at the beginning, a key part of partnerships is the budget part of the partnership and the reporting part. Because too often in grant writing, people are too focused on getting the application in and getting the money in the door. And then when the money's there, all of a sudden they're like, ooh, we're not ready. We're not prepared to execute on what we said we were going to do. And in the end, report and prepare the data and prove we did what we said we were going to do. So the biggest thing is when you are creating these partnership documents, you have to focus on the end game at the very beginning. So you need to be able to tie those commitments to your budget and your reporting plan. So, for example, a partner role would be to facilitate workshops. In the chat, can you tell me what a better way of saying facilitate workshops would be using the example from the previous slide? Okay. I'll go ahead and give my answer then, since everybody seems to be a little shy right now. For me, a better way of saying that is partner will facilitate 6 workshops during the grant period, and then name the type of population that would be the target audience. So we're going to facilitate those 6 workshops. Partner, yep, there you go. Thank you, Muslim Foster Care Association. Partner will facilitate 2 workshops on mental health. Another great, we hit the number and the subject. That is a better way of phrasing it. So now we're going to talk about how are they going to be compensated? Are they going to be compensated through an exclusive contract with referrals? Are they going to receive a stipend or monetary compensation? Or will me, as the organization receiving the referrals, do I have something that I can provide to them in kind? Do I, for example, have 2 therapists that I could have spend 8 hours every week in their office for free to compensate them for facilitating those workshops and providing the referrals? After we decide on how to connect the budget, we need to be able to prove it was done. The easiest way to do that is have attended sheets, an agenda for the workshop to show that we thought through actual planning of the workshop, a slide deck similar to what we produce for these workshops, photos that were taken. Of course, we always want to make sure that people agree to being photographed or recorded. And any good workshop at the end will put out a survey for the people who attended to measure if it was successful or if they learned anything. So those are all ways that you can prove that it was done, and then therefore provide data and information for the reports for the grant. So before the grant is written or while the grant is being written, you need to decide, how are we going to close this grant out? And it seems like it's way too early, but if you plan ahead, I promise you the partnership will go much more smoothly. So, who's responsible for collecting the participant data? And if both places are responsible for data, making sure that they know exactly what data they're required to collect. What format will be used? Is it a survey? Is it attendance sheets? When is the data due to the lead agency? You can't have the data show up 3 days before the report is due. That's not enough time. So we need to make sure ahead of time we know exactly when it's due. And who reviews the data? Who are the leadership people responsible for making sure the data is of good quality and the report reflects an accurate representation of what happened during that grant time? Next, please. All right. So I'm not going to do another breakout because we've done quite a few of those already. We've done the 2, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to maybe get a little bit of dialogue going on. So hopefully at this point you have identified a type, at the very least, a category of partner that you need, whether it's a mental health provider, whether it's a food pantry, a transportation provider. Who here has an actual name of an organization that they would like to share that they are thinking about approaching?
Grand Rapids Public Library.
Grand Rapids Public Library. Okay. So, thank you, Holland. What role would the library play with the welcome plan?
They will be facilitating a single grant writing workshop. They'll be providing space, and they will be going over the grant and foundations database that is available in person at the main library.
Okay. When and how often will they be doing that?
They do this annually, and the workshop takes place usually in the month of July or August.
Okay. Do they get paid or do you exchange services?
It is an in-kind donation from the library, mainly due to our institutions have no way to send monies to each other. And it's part of the business librarian's role, so he can't accept funds for it.
Got it. How do you prove that that workshop is done?
So we take attendance metrics at all of our workshops, and we recorded the first workshop to be able to post it on our grant workshop website. However, we don't re-record the workshops because they are generally the same content on that database.
All right. And based on the 5 different types of documents, what do you think would best fit with what that relationship is if you were to write a grant for getting funding for that?
You'll have to remind me the 5 type of documents.
Letter of support, no problem. Letter of support, letter of commitment, MOU, partnership agreement, or shared work plan.
A letter of commitment might be the most relevant or perhaps an MOU.
Mhm. Yeah. I think for, if you were seeking additional funding or additional services, an MOU would probably be a good one, but for where you are right now, letter of commitment, it sounds good. Does anybody else want to go through the process? Anyone? Okay, well then we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. All right, so takeaway tools that you can use immediately. Hopefully, I've seen Holland posted several times. You've seen the link for the simple agreement templates that will cover letter of support, letter of commitment, MOU, partnership agreement, and shared work plan. You've created a partner checklist based on the determining fit, working through the risk analysis. And then the next thing now is to create a plan. Who are you going to approach specifically? If you don't know names of specific organizations, how are you going to find those organizations' names? Hint, Google's a really good place to start. How are you going to work them into your budget, your data sharing plan? And how are you going to ensure that everybody's expectations are aligned at the very beginning with the end in sight on those grant reports? So the goal is that these tools should help your team that you work with and the team at your potential partner make an informed decision well before the grant deadline. And to be very honest with you, you should start working on these before the grant is even available to apply for. If you start working on it now, you won't be scrambling when that magical RFP opens up. And the worst time to do it is to not do it at all, to be very honest with you. But it's always better to do it before the proposal is written. All right. And next we'll move on to one of the last slides. So again, clear partnership documents help you as a nonprofit write stronger proposals, manage those working relationships, and build true relationships and partnerships. Choose partners that fill service gaps. Funding is very limited out there right now, and organizations that are bridging gaps by working together are more and more competitive in this limited funding environment that we're in right now. The best way to do it is clearly define those roles with a lot of detail and make sure you are talking about the budget and the reports before you submit the grant. Everybody, you definitely don't want to be carrying the weight of everything if you're not receiving all the money for the grant. Match the document type of one of the 5 levels of commitment. Clarify the data, the deadlines, and the communication before you submit. And then I really love, again, I know you guys have been kind of quiet today, but what is one partnership document your organization should create or revise before your next grant submission? Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one question.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Lina.
Hello, Molly.
I'm not Monica. I'm Lina. Sorry, that's my boss's. So, we are trying to find
we know that there's like a transportation provider, I would say, or organization. However, it doesn't cover all what we need or the specific need that we have. So my question would be, is it worth it just to just like see and reach out to them and try, or just not even like, I don't know, like we want to like make sure that we want to facilitate transportation to farm workers for like general appointments, or I don't know, one of the days to go to get like to the food pantries and stuff. So as far as I know that the service that provide transportation is very specific in what they do, but we still want to see if this is like a possibility or if we just should just drop it.
Well, one of the things that I have always tried to live by is the answer will always be no if you don't ask. So if you know somebody does similar stuff, but not quite what you need, asking them if they can, and if they can't, is it a funding issue? Is it a staffing issue? Is partnering together on a grant to solve that issue on their end able to expand the resources to where you need it? And that sounds like a perfect place to start, is saying, we'd love to work with you, but you don't do quite what we need. Are you interested in offering these services? And if you are, what would it take to be able to do it? And they may say no, but they may say, we've been looking for someone to partner with. We just haven't had anyone. You never know until you ask.
Okay. Yeah, that will be my question. Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Yes, I do. My question is, if you partner with a for-profit business, look, let me not call it partner. If you have a grant and within the grant you want to get a service done by a for-profit business, does that count as a partnership, or does it count? Or is it just you getting a service done?
Ooh, and that is a really good question, Judith. And I'll be very honest with you, that a lot of times comes down to the funder. What I would do in that case is, if the funder isn't very clear, then you need to reach out to them and ask. And if that isn't feasible, you need to make it very clear in the proposal that they are a for-profit organization. You need to be extremely transparent. It is not necessarily forbidden, but transparency is key in that situation. All right, so I was asked in the chat, before reaching out to a partner, do we need to have a specific grant in mind? Or partnerships also happen to find funding together? Trish, do you want to answer that one? It's in the chat.
Yes,
We're losing you, Trish.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and answer then, since her signal seems to be weak. I would say the time to start reaching out is now, before that grant has even hit your radar. If you can have all of the infrastructure and all of the decisions and all of the paperwork done before the grant, then you'll be ready. And then you'll be able to, a lot of times partnerships have different resources so they can work together to find that funding.
In the past, I've always had the mindset of if I'm writing a grant for a specific project, and I find that within our team we can't do it, maybe the work is too much. I just thought the solution was either to hire somebody else or to add more staff time. What should my thinking be? Should it be that I find a partner who can probably handle it first, or should I look within my team first to see how we can expand to take care of that issue?
It really goes into what services are you currently providing and what are you looking to add. If it is just the next logical expansion of services. So for example, I have a food pantry, and I have several of the people who work with me that want to start a food co-op. That makes sense. That's the next logical. But instead, or versus, I have a food pantry and all of these people are coming to me saying they're having a hard time getting to us because we're not on a bus route. Adding transportation is very different, most likely, than any of the current tasks your staff have. And even though they may have internal capacity to do that, setting up a transportation infrastructure takes a lot more time and effort. And there's likely someone out there that can assist who already has built all of that for you.
Yeah, one last one for me. Do you think, from your own experiences, and even for Trisha and David, when you're a smaller organization, do you think bigger organizations are willing or able to partner, or do you think that you have to first start out with people who are on the same level as you?
I can just add my 2 cents here because LIA, Lighthouse Immigrant Advocates, has gone from being that small organization to being that large organization in the space of like 2.5 years. So I feel like I've been on both sides of it. And not to say that LIA is huge. There are, I think, much larger organizations than us as well. I think it really comes down to the readiness of each organization, how committed they are to partnerships. It's just one person's idea to go forward with it, and there's not involvement with the leadership of the organization, or maybe even 1 or 2 board members that have an idea what's going on. Regardless of the size of the organization, it's not going to work out very well. So that's something that I've always been, questioning and wanting to learn more about other organizations as I need them. Like, how reliable is this relationship going to be in the future? And that really is, you would think it's more prevalent or more of a risk in smaller organizations, but I've actually found that even in large organizations, with just how much programs change and funding changes, and you want to know what's going to be that continuing factor for the duration of the project that you're working together on. I think small organizations, will struggle more because, again, the capacity and that margin to do additional work for grant writing, that is going to be hard to find. But if you start with it from the onset of saying, like, these are projects that we know are important and will be best accomplished collaboratively with partnerships at some level, like that's a posture, that's a perspective that your organization can adopt going forward. So not every project you do will need that, but if that's like a basis of where your organization lives and breathes, it's going to be easier to then bring these kinds of preparation steps into it. I think large organizations also have a responsibility to understand where the organization is with partnering with smaller organizations. Like, that's part of the development of any good nonprofit, good stewardship, good community responsibility, is to understand, like, we are, going to, at a high level, going to be looking for these kinds of partnerships. And then also I think just for the sake of efficiency, but also good stewardship of time, like you want to know, like we have a quick way to say like these kinds of partnerships and organizations we are not looking to do because either not prepared or they don't serve the needs of our mission close enough where it's going to work out. So I think having those conversations is really important regardless of size, but for small organizations, you're looking for large organizations that have had those conversations. They're not starting them from scratch and vice versa.
I have a question in regarding number of partners on a project. What's the ideal number? I guess it depends on what kind of project it is, but what it's, I know a partner is one, maybe one or two, got 3, 4. What's the ideal number of partners on a project?
Okay, I can take that. I don't know. I will not say that there's no ideal number. It just depending on the gap you need. The gap you need in your project. You may need maybe like transportation services. You may need like maybe childcare. You may need like it just depend on the gap you need. So that will determine the amount of partners you need for your project.
And the different types of commitment level can be different. So if you choose to have, for example, 3 partners, you can have 1 letter of commitment, 1 MOU, and 1 letter of support. So they don't all have to have the same level of commitment for that particular program or project.
Okay.
Say you are partnering with an organization that's smaller and that needs to use a fiduciary. When you start the partnership, do you go through to kind of disperse the funds? Do you still go through the fiduciary or do you go through the nonprofit? Might be a dumb question.
David, do you have, or Trish, do you have that answer?
I'm not sure if could I ask just a follow-up question? So when it comes to like, say that, my organization has a fiduciary, like we're fiduciary for another nonprofit that's just starting out. Are you saying that the funds we dispersed directly to like my organization versus the small organization? Is that your question? I'm not sure if
Yeah. So if I were to come and partner with Lighthouse, do I need to? And I wanted to. I'm partnering with that smaller organization. But you, as the fiduciary, do I need to disperse funds to you as the fiduciary, or can it go directly to the?
I think the role of the fiduciary would require that the funds be distributed to a larger organization who then has that agreement in place for how those funds are managed. But
so in the documents that you're doing in your grant, does it need to be stated that there's a fiduciary also involved?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And the more formal processes that like community foundations and even more established family foundations will have a specific question on their like list of like, are you a fiduciary or not? If you are, then they're going to want details and information about that. There are some corporate entities or other foundations that won't grant directly to fiduciaries. It really depends on the foundation's requirements. So that's a case of like, you just need to really read and hopefully get some good responses from the staff if there are any available at a foundation or granting entity that you're looking at. I found that, a quick phone call or like a 15-minute Zoom call is enough to get really good clarity on that from any organization that we're considering applying for. I have a question for Trish and Trisha, which is, do you have any examples of where you've seen partnerships go wrong? And I don't want to know about them. What I want to know is what went wrong. So things that we can be more aware of, like things that you've seen are like, oh man, I mean, these are the reasons. I mean, you covered so much of this information in depth and detail, but
Yeah. I'll go first. the most common example that I've seen, and unfortunately it happens a little too often for my liking, is a very large nonprofit or hospital system or somebody who has a lot of money wanting to partner with a smaller grassroots organization that is often BIPOC led to kind of increase their diversity in their sphere. And they offer the small grassroots led organization a certain sum of money to perform tasks that are going to take 2 or 3 times as much for that organization to actually perform. And they get into it and they realize that they're way in over their head. And that's why I was really careful to mention making sure if you are approached that what you are going to do is, that's why knowing your budget and knowing the cost of doing business is so important, because you need to know, well, okay, if you want me to do this, I don't need $25, I need $75,000. Or if you're going to give me 25, I'm not going to do this every week. I can do it once a month. You can adjust expectations or adjust the funding expectation.
Yeah, I've heard of one. Yeah. And this situation where a partner was listed in a proposal, but after the grant was awarded, there was like confusion about what they were actually responsible for. So the lead organization thought the partner would help with referrals, with attendance, with data. But at the end, there was like disagreement and it really affected the project.
Mm-hmm. And I've also had in the past where a small nonprofit has said they were partnering with one of my clients, and my client had never talked to them. So when the funder called them up and say, hey, are you really partnering with so-and-so? My client's like, no, we've never even spoken. So having all of these conversations before that grant is you even know about the grant is so critical, because the last thing you need to do is be made out to be a liar.
I think that is like worthy of kind of like a ditto, because I have had lots of heard of lots of experiences of nonprofits where they're listed in another organization's grant narrative as a partner, but they never notified them. And sometimes it's important who you notify too. So you might be partnering with a staff member in a large organization and be like, hey, this is our partner. But the call goes to the executive director or the head of that org. And the head of the org doesn't know anything about it. So I think even if you are talking about a valid partnership, making sure that you confirm with that org that's like, hey, I'm going to mention this in the grant. Like, is this okay? So just I think doing that due diligence can't be understated.
I'd like to ask the opposite question now, because I'm also interested in both, like the what to watch out for. But in your past experience writing grants and assisting organizations, Trisha, and any others, like have you seen any particularly notable, fruitful, successful, well-run partnerships that resulted in grants that led to the kind of impact that organizations were looking for? Can you share some examples of what were key features that made them work so well?
I know of several, but I'm not sure there's some confidentiality things there's a food network in Kent County that is very a collaborative that's working very well together to bridge gaps, and they do seek joint funding quite often without necessarily needing these. But they're doing a very good job, and they're reaching more people together than they can as individual organizations. But that partnership is born from the leadership of those organizations intentionally seeking out gap filling services and territory filling services.
So a question for that kind of partnership that's successful. So each, in terms of if they have they roll a grant for a certain amount, so each organization knows how much they are getting out of the grant depending on, what the various needs are being asked.
Yes. They're very number focused, very transparent. There's no guessing. They've had all of these conversations before they've written a grant. They know who does what, expectations are rolled out, and they know each other's budgets. I mean, if you think about it, a nonprofit, you're telling everybody what your financial information is every time you file your 990. So pretending that your financials should be some big secret, it really doesn't help build that trust and transparency because it's public record anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just share one example from Lighthouse Immigrant Advocates that I think towards the early start of my years here, we partnered with several different, just wide array of nonprofits to solve a specific legal need, basically for a pretty group, like a very specific group of immigrants that were just coming and needing services. So our partnership agreements were very well defined. We went to the point of even setting up not just shared spreadsheets, but we did negotiations to figure out like what the actual kinds of information each column would be, the reporting schedule, and it really allowed us both to seek more funding. So like it didn't allow both organizations to get a joint grant, but what it did give us was we had the same language and program description. We're doing very different things for the same group of people, but like we end up getting funded from the same funder for what is essentially the same project, but doing two different pieces of it. So like we knew in some ways it was competitive because, there's never infinite dollars in the cycle, but at the same time, I think that having very clear, like unified understanding of what each other's programs, I know was impressive to the grant administrators at the time that were like, wow, we can see exactly how this is going to work together. Obviously, you're not trying to put one program in, but the collaboration is there. And so I know we got different amounts because we were doing different things, if that makes sense, but we were also leveraging that relationship to be able to, I think, both get more than we would have and to be able to accomplish more than we would have individually, or if we had not done that level of coordination. So that said, we didn't plan on applying for grants in that way. That need to coordinate was born out of the need for service, not the need for funding, but it just happened to work out that like someone decided, oh wow, this is really cool, we should turn this into grant requests, and it worked out. I have another question, and this, I don't think this was a little bit touched on, but I'd love to know, are there things that you can do in partnership agreements that better prepare the organizations for if and when there are changes in both leadership and the responsible parties for the programs involved in these grant applications and agreements? Because you touched on like roles and like specific timelines and schedules, but is there anything else that we can do as organizations to better prepare? And it's really a when, not an if question. All organizations see a lot of change in their staffing, both top to bottom.
I think if you are creating an MOU or a partnership agreement, obviously there's different levels of legal ramifications and things like that. Having a succession plan built into them is not a bad idea. Considering how unstable the nonprofit sector is right now, especially, I think having a succession plan built in to those agreements ahead of time is wise. And just, you can even say this agreement will be good for at least 60 days post position change. And then in that 60 days, you get in front of them and you rewrite it, re-sign it, move on, kind of thing.
In the helpful links doc, there's the presentation attachments under the workshop agenda. And that's where you can access those templates. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that that's where you can find the templates that Trisha referred to. And I did drop the exit survey in the chat. Would really appreciate everybody's feedback. It was really, really important. We really value your voice and value what you really liked and maybe things that you would like to see adapted. And so it really does shape our future workshops. And if there's no other questions, I'll pass it over to David to do some closing remarks. And then Marcial, you can stop the screen share.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to start by encouraging everyone to fill out that survey, which is in that link that Alan just shared. While we were on break, I was looking at it and going, wow, this is just a really great survey because it's short and it's to the point and it will take you maybe 2.5 minutes to fill out. So that's a really cool best practice that I just encourage you to steal. Take for your own grant writing in the future, because this is the exact kind of thought that you put into getting the feedback from the work that you're doing. And Welcome Plan other organizers have done a great job preparing for that. So yeah, but highly encourage, they do read every response and then they take action based on those responses to both plan future ideas for programs, but to adjust how they're doing things. So that's a really cool feedback loop. I will say, and again, I've not attended all of the grant workshops, but I've known about them from the very first one to now. I just encourage you all that are on this call to just save the documents, and you can look at the notes, but you also have all the slides. This is really just truly a great resource that I know that you can bring to the work that you're doing and to be able to power the impact and fund it. So please know that even if it feels daunting to do this level of work and identifying partners and figuring out how you're going to manage to wrangle all the different pieces together, it is going to be worth it, especially with the frameworks that you have been given access to. I was looking at chat. I'll just admit right now, I reached out to one of the participants here because they mentioned Lighthouse Innovate Advocates as someone they'd like to work with. Do that. Please reach out to each other. I think that the more that folks that do grant writing work know each other, it's not even networking. It's kind of like we support each other, right? I mean, so please get connected and know who each other are. I'm looking forward to just learning more about what different organizations do. And finally, this is advice that a grant administrator from the foundation that we applied to once gave me. I'm not sure how healthy it was, but they were very correct, so I'll share it. And their advice was, these grant applications that you write, at least in their own experience, they've always put in the work kind of after hours, if that makes sense. I think if your organization, which I think most of you are, I certainly into that pile, you're already doing pieces of running organization that you're doing. And so finding time to do grant related work, at least at the outset, you're doing something that is not risky, but it's not guaranteed. So find time to do it, and find time to do it in a way, even if it's at night after the kids go to sleep. Put in an hour or two for a week or two, and you'll find yourself getting the progress that you need. Especially since if you're a nonprofit, no one has time. If you try to find me during 8 to 6 every day and finding an hour to work on a grant seems impossible, because it usually is, but that's unfortunately the best advice I can give. Not encouraging you to stay up until 4 a.m. running grant applications. That is not what I'm saying, but it is the kind of work that builds on itself over time. So just I really encourage you to take the time in chunks, and don't try to do it all at once. My gosh, that is the worst thing you could do, I would say, because trying to sit down for 8 hours straight doing nothing but a grant application is, well, that's dark. So chunk it out, reach out for help, and stay hopeful, because there are, I think, ways that funders want to find the work that you are all doing and to really invest in it and see us all succeed. With that said, I will say thank you, especially to Tricia and Trish, for their amazing insights into all that they have given us today. Appreciate all of you attending this workshop. It's we're ending, I think, a little early, but I think still with a lot to think about. Big thanks to Holland, Judith, and Martial, and everyone at the Welcome Plan for organizing this series. And other than that, I wish you all just a lovely, lovely day and a great week.